All right, I'm Jay Cherry, and we're here broadcasting live. This is Below the Surface, live with Mr. Sparks.
Good evening.
So we are going to be talking about tonight WikiHow. WikiHow has an article out for teens. There's a bunch of stuff in WikiHow. I highly recommend you go take a peek at WikiHow. They are recommending, or they have a WikiHow on how to get vaccination without your parents' consent. Now, I know this is such a hot topic and people have a lot of different opinions on this topic. So what I'm really concerned about is the fact it's not about being pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. This is about knowing that your child is going to get a medical procedure and the risks that are involved with that medical procedure and what you can do about it. So the fact that we have the 1986 Vaccine Injury Act, which indemnified vaccine manufacturers of childhood vaccinations, because not all vaccines are covered under the National Vaccine Injury Act. It's actually the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. So some vaccines like Zostafax, which is being sued for vaccine injury right now, and it's been taken off the market because adults were getting the shingles from the shingles vaccine made by Merck, and they were getting injured and they were getting all these problems. So they started suing Merck, the manufacturers of the Zostafax shingles vaccine, because they could, because it wasn't indemnified. But if your child gets the Verifax vaccine, which is the chickenpox vaccine, also made by Merck, there's nothing you can do. So if your child got injured by, say, the Verifax vaccine, the only recourse that you have is to pursue damages in the vaccine court, which isn't really even a court. There's no legal discovery allowed. It's basically, it's a monkey court. So when you have something like WikiHow teaching children how to get a vaccine without parental consent, it's very concerning and it's scary, quite honestly. So this is one of the slides that I found that I just wanted to read because I thought this one was particularly disturbing. This is, okay, so it's just going into about getting the shot. Figure out what, if anything, to say to your family. You can say that you're going out. You don't have to say where. You can also tell a white lie, like saying that you're visiting a friend to study, to hang out. You're allowed to tell lies to protect your health and safety, and getting vaccinated is one of those cases. I can't even believe this. I have so much to say about that. Just that line alone. And getting vaccinated is one of those cases where you can lie to your parents. Never mind that this is a medical procedure that comes with risk of injury. Never mind that what do you do in the case of a severe adverse event, like having a seizure or something to that effect, and your parents have no idea what's wrong with you, and then take you to the hospital, and the doctors there have no idea what's wrong with you, and nobody knows what's wrong with you because you went and got a vaccine somewhere, and nobody knows. So it says, if you say that you were with a friend, this is continuing how to lie to your parents, contact that friend and their family, explain that you are actually going to get vaccinated and ask them to cover for you. And, it goes on to say about what you can lie about. And then it says, if your parents are distrustful, prepare your cover story especially well. Try actually doing your cover story activity on a different day and even taking a selfie doing that thing with your friend. This way you'll have evidence of doing it, and you can answer questions if they quiz you. Oh my God, Mr. Sparks.
Well, they're telling teenagers all those techniques we used, except I didn't have
Yeah, that's the type of stuff you used to call your best friend, and you'd be talking on, remember the days of just talking on the phone and having to be in the kitchen to talk on the phone. Remember you'd be in the kitchen and you pull the wire, you go hide in the bathroom, that wire would stretch all around the kitchen. I know, old school. But anyway, it's, so vaccines come with risk. So when you're telling children to go out and have a medical procedure, or teaching them how to lie, or even instilling fear that they need these things, because I know there's all this, like bumper sticker slogan things out there of safe and effective. The science is settled, but none of that is really true. Okay, it's not safe and effective for everyone. Okay, some people can take a vaccine and they're not going to have any problems, but we also know, well, any problems that they're aware of that are connected to the vaccine. But we also know through there was a lawsuit where the government was sued, and we know that there have not been any double-blind placebo studies of vaccine with a real inert placebo. And you had something to say about that on WikiHow, what they were saying.
Well, what you can find is they have a question and answer part of their articles, and someone asked that question, and they said, is it true? My parents say that they've never had a placebo safety test, and then their response was, that's not true. They do placebo tests, so they're actually spreading misinformation.
Yeah, and you had said that in their WikiHow responses that they said that with a new vaccine that's never been out before, especially they test it with a
double blind. Here it is. That's not true. This is their answer. If a vaccine is completely new and there's no previous vaccine for the same disease, it undergoes randomized double-blind trials where some people get the vaccine and some get a placebo, such as saline.
Wow. So, but they don't. There's no, it's a comparator. It's a comparator. It's not a real true placebo. So basically what that means is that when they're testing, so with the Gardasil vaccine, they tested for a very short period of time. They did actually use a real double-blind inert placebo, and they did use a saline solution for a very short period of time. It's very interesting. You can go on Children's Health Defense, and you can find out way more information about that. They have an excellent information more about Gardasil and the studies and whatnot. But back to the comparators, and what they're doing is they're taking an adjuvant and they're testing a vaccine. So we'll just use the HPV vaccine as an example. So they tested Gardasil against an adjuvant. So what you have in a vaccine are antigens and adjuvants. So antigens are the disease, they're the diluted disease, and they are, supposedly the idea is that they are so minute that they're not really going to make you sick. So the adjuvant makes the body react. And the idea is that there's not enough adjuvant to make you really, really sick, just enough to stimulate your immune system. That's the idea behind it. But there are risks involved. And it doesn't work for everybody. And there's no double-blind inert placebo studies. So we don't know that much about vaccines. And there's a really interesting, even a TED Talk, although I can't remember the lady's name, but the scientist that she was working with, Dr. Abby. And he's done some studies about that. I don't have a slide for that because we're really talking about WikiHow. But let me pull up this slide. No, we already just did that slide. So, let's talk about who is partnered with WikiHow, Mr. Sparks. I got this slide right up for you where you found that great information, being a sleuth.
It's Amazon.
Amazon.
It's right on their site. It's not being a sleuth.
No, of course it's not being a sneak or a sleuth, but it's still very interesting.
It is right on their site. And the one I found interesting is the second one. You first got Amazon. You could read it right there. You got Amazon and you got Facebook.
Yeah, so let's see. WikiHow is a proud partner of Amazon for access to tens of thousands of wiki articles. So that also means that Alexa, so that little Alexa thing, she goes to WikiHow. And there was something else that you said about WikiHow being like one of the go-to sites for information. WikiHow is also a proud partner with Facebook. Now, interesting thing about Facebook. Okay, so Facebook Mark Zuckerberg's wife is a pediatrician, and they are investing in a mind device. I'm not making this up. This is a true story. So they're investing in like a mind device, and the idea is this is going to be a medical device, and it's going to send like electric waves into the body. And I guess they're promoting this as a means to help people like quadriplegics, or basically what the thing that Facebook is investing in is it's going to be able to, you can control your body. So an entity can control your body. This stuff is so weird. And it's such a strange time that the sacredness of being a parent and a family and protecting your children and making medical decisions is being encroached upon by an entity that's hungry to have access to your child from a very young age and encouraging them to get medical procedures and to take drugs behind your back without your permission or consent. So so the other one is we're not sure about these other organizations.
Well, I did read about the Direct
Nucella.
Relief.
What is Direct Relief?
Direct Relief is a award-winning humanitarian aid organization.
An NGO.
Yes. That works with WikiHow to verify critical health and safety content. So, the interesting thing I was looking for this particular article that we're talking about, there was one that said how to opt out of vaccine. So I'm like, oh, okay, so it's balanced, right? It gives you that information as well. But when you actually read the article, it does not. It does tell you that you do have some rights, and all states are different. Like, you have a religious exemption you can use, but they also state that, that's highly unethical to use it if it's not based on a religion that is recognized, or so it's just such a biased load of information. So yeah, I would say Direct Relief, though it has a very nice mission, some of their critical verification of their health and safety content is questionable.
Yeah, it's a piece of work. So we have it's really just like a wild, crazy world that we're living in. And let's see, I have a video that I want to play. This is a very, very short clip. So this is Josh Elliott. He has been spearheading to get the HPV vaccine mandated in Connecticut. So I'm just going to play this short clip. This has also got Dr. Sin Heng Lee, who is a medical doctor as well as a PhD. And so I'm just going to play the clip for you guys. Here we go.
Why mandated?
The magical number for herd immunity for HPV is around 80%. And so this is around the time that's important that we get to the children before they start having intercourse.
And back to the HPV, we met some families today who say after their kids got that HPV vaccine, their life totally changed. They weren't able to talk anymore. Their livelihood was gone. What do you have to say to that?
This is not statistical evidence. This is anecdotal evidence, and we need to be making sure that we're using statistical evidence and not anecdotal evidence.
Your take on the HPV vaccine? Do you think it should be mandated in the schools? Why?
The reason is that the truth is that there's no evidence HPV vaccination has prevented a single cervical cancer anywhere in the world.
So you have a legislator and you have a medical doctor, both coming from a different angle and a different point. Isn't that enough to say that this is a highly contended issue and there's something off here, and maybe entities like WikiHow teaching children to lie and get medical procedures behind their parents' back is not the, it's a very strange thing that this is happening.
Even more scarier is that the actual laws that are being passed that are enforcing this in different states. I think there's 4 states that already have the laws in place for HPV, getting, I think New York is working on it, and so is Connecticut.
New York is aggressively pushing, mandating the HPV vaccine, the flu vaccine. And let's just talk about this for a minute there, too. So there are over 270 vaccines that are coming up. There's going to be a vaccine for like everything. And so the point is that when it comes to medical procedures, those are something that should be discussed between a patient, a provider and their client, their patient, the person they're caring for, their caregiver, and the person receiving care. And these are personal things. And so when parents have children, why is it just assumed that parents are bubbling idiots, are conspiracy theorists because they're questioning a pharmaceutical product? Like, let's look at that. Purdue just was, it was just proven that Purdue knew that their opioids were going to be highly addictive. And if they were indemnified from being sued, they would blame the victim as they were. They're blaming victims, people who got addicted to opioids. They were blaming them for that. Meanwhile, Purdue knew. They knew what they were doing. They knew. So we have a clip here. This is Dr. Larry. So Dr. Larry Palevsky came up to Connecticut just this past November. And this is a short clip. I'm not going to play the whole thing. You can see the whole clip is on my Vimeo account. It's Jay Cherry on Vimeo. And you can see the whole clip. You can even download it. I shared a few clips. And so I'm going to play a little bit of this. I'm not going to play the whole clip, but I just want you to listen to what he has to say. This is a licensed board certified pediatrician. He is a medical doctor as well as a PhD and is an expert in pediatric care. This is Dr. Larry Palevsky.
My name is Dr. Lawrence Palevsky. I'm a pediatrician, originally trained at NYU School of Medicine, graduated in 1987, finished my residency at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York in 1990, and did a fellowship at the Bellevue Hospital in the outpatient department. The first 9 years of my career were spent in ERs, running an intensive care unit, working in a neonatal intensive care unit, working inpatient in the hospital, working in a clinic, and then eventually having a private practice. In 1983, when I started medical school, I was taught vaccines were safe and they were effective and give them. But I was not taught about any of the science around their safety or any of the studies around how safety were done. And it wasn't until 1998 that a mother came up to me and said, "Dr. Larry, did you know that there's mercury in vaccines?" And I said, "No, I did not." And as a medical student, I was trained to critically think. If you see an observation, you go after it and try and figure out if there's a question to ask. So instead of just ignoring it, I looked further into the vaccine ingredients. And I found that there were a number of vaccine ingredients that in animal studies were proven to be very dangerous to animals. And I didn't understand why these same ingredients were actually in vaccines. I was starting to hear stories from parents, not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of stories from parents who took a very healthy child into their doctor's office and then found that their child lost much of their health, whether it was their speech, whether it was seizures, whether it was death, whether it was asthma, allergies, eczema, whether it was autism, whether it was learning disabilities, whether it was inflammatory bowel disease, autoimmune diseases. And every one of those parents were told it had nothing to do with the vaccine. Every single one. And this continues today. But yet, when I look at the ingredients that are in the vaccines, I have the science to actually explain how these medical problems could be happening in these children. Today, one child in 5 is learning disabled. In 1976, it was 1 in 17. 1 in 6 under age 8, 1 in 2 adolescents, and 1 in 4 young adults is diagnosed with a mental, behavioral, or emotional disorder. 1 in 20 children under the age of 5 have seizures. 1 child in 40 develops autism. The number of cases of children and adults with autoimmune diseases is rising exponentially. It's one of the highest rising diseases in this country. And the vaccine ingredients, if you are willing to look at them and understand how they work when they're injected into the body, can be seen to be responsible for every single one of these cases.
That is, so that was Dr. Larry Polveski, and he was in Connecticut in November. And that's a great clip. You could see the entire clip. It's on my Vimeo page. So we did this live tonight. We wanted to talk about the WikiHow and telling children how to get vaccinated without parental consent. And I think it's just getting too out of control. Children should never be encouraged to lie to their parents and get medical procedures and keep it on the down low and lie, or to be afraid of their parents, to be able to afraid and come and talk to parents. I think that most adults are reasonable people. Yeah, there's always extreme cases out there, but we have to gain control back of ourselves here, because this is getting to be a very scary, slippery slope. So I pulled up this slide here. So you had some information here, Mr. Sparks, about this young fellow here. This is Ethan Lindenberg. Ethan Lindenberg.
He kind of rose to fame.
He rose to fame.
Kid that was on Reddit asking how to get he wanted to get vaccinated. His parents were anti-vaxxer. His mom, I guess, and they kind of seized it. I don't know exactly how that went on, but a state started introducing bills based on that. That they're trying to got to get the kids their vaccines. So, it was just either interesting synchronicity, or the cynical me says that they definitely exploited this opportunity, or created this opportunity, even worse. But one of the concerns I would have about the whole WikiHow thing is that it's kind of noted as like a reputable source, as a go-to for how to do all kinds of stuff, and it ranges from benign to very serious issues. But what I've read several articles now on vaccination, and they all are very slanted, and they're all passing some misinformation. They claim that there is placebo blind testing for vaccines. In another article here, they constantly say that. They say that when they first come on the market, sometimes they look at them for 10 to 15 years before they even make the market.
My God, they said that?
Yep. They said it can take 10, 15, even 20 years for a vaccine to be introduced to the public. They're monitored extensively, even after clinical trials have ended. That's totally just not true. Yeah. Okay, so Gardasil was fast-tracked through... These vaccines are not studied. There's never been a true inert double-blind placebo study, and you can go check out ICANN Action Network and check out they had a lawsuit where they sued HHS, and they found out that there were no double-blind inert placebo studies. Yes, they do studies. They do short studies. They don't study them for long, and they're using not a true saline placebo or an inert placebo, which could be sugar or saline, but something that's not going to make you react. Or water, because maybe salt or sugar could make people react, but like an inert placebo study. So they use an antigen to test these vaccines against, an adjuvant. And they use the adjuvant to test against, say, we'll use the Gardasil vaccine to test against the HPV vaccine. And it's not really using a true double-blind inert placebo study. Although I will say with Gardasil, they did do a very short time period where they did use a true double-blind placebo study, but they were having so many problems. Okay, because people were getting really sick. The people who were getting the saline were doing way better than the people that were really getting the vaccine. So it's really interesting. You can go check out Children's Health Defense for more information on that. There's a lot of information on the Gardasil vaccine, all kinds of good fact-based stuff. So when we talk about the science being settled, the science is never, never, never settled. And when it comes to parental rights, it's not like they're rights like you own your child. It's not an ownership thing. You love your children. As parents, we love our children. So we are endowed to look after them. They're our children. We gave birth to them. We gave life to them.
we're biologically tuned to want the best for our children. I mean, that's how we've evolved. We're actually devolving, okay? We're not living as long. Our country is not doing well health-wise. We have very, very bad infant mortality rates. We have very bad health. 54% of our children are chronically ill. We're not doing well. The third leading cause of death is from iatrogenic disease, not diseases. Well, iatrogenic, I guess you'd call it diseases, but it's like medical mistakes. Okay. So not to pick on Western medicine has many wonderful things about it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bash that, because there are people in my family that are alive today because there are great surgeons in the world, all right? There are great doctors in the world. This is not a doctor bashing. This is a discussion on pharmaceutical companies and how they've infiltrated every facet of our culture and society via the media, via our government, and they are controlling the narrative, and it's dangerous. And our children are up for grabs like this, but they're true. Who they really want is adults. So they want to mandate all these vaccines so that you can't get a driver's license or passport or anything. So they're starting with the kids, and they put this fear tactic into children, and then they're teaching children how to lie on WikiHow to get this vaccine that comes with side effects, and that's so dangerous.
But, too, as a parent, though, don't you think that teenagers are not really equipped to make all their own decisions at that point? I mean, they are impulsive, and it's just a fact, that the teenagers do not know everything. Just like, parents don't either, but they at least are responsible to them legally too, and they would have to pay for this, and then all those factors. It's just really mind blowing. The more you look at WikiHow and the information that is, put out there as authority and right, and it's false information. One of them, they asked these questions. One of the questions was, I mean, come on, look around. Do you see people sick everywhere? If vaccines are bad, and then what I think is amusing is the response is helpful or not helpful. They'll be like 100 say it was helpful, and 1,200 say it's not helpful. So there's obviously people interacting with it, which is interesting. But yeah, so I got another article about how to deal with anti-vaxxers. So there's a whole, it's all like the same kind of content, like, but different angles of it. But it's like, feel bad for them because they are stupid. They don't know what, they've got all this misinformation and it's confusing. And then they go on to tell you things like, discuss the logic of big pharma conspiracy. Conspiracies are very hard work to maintain, especially on such a large scale. Why would doctors be allowed to break their Hippocratic oath in this case when they're strictly held to it otherwise? What makes vaccines special?
Well, we can go back into what Dr. Larry says at the beginning. I'm going to play it real quick again. This is Dr. Larry. I'm going to play just the first few seconds of it.
Why mandate it?
Oops, that's the wrong one. This one.
My name is Dr. Lawrence Pilevsky. I'm a pediatrician, originally trained at NYU School of Medicine, graduated in 1987, finished my residency at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York in 1990, and did a fellowship at the Bellevue Hospital in the outpatient department. The first 9 years of my career were spent in ERs, running an intensive care unit, working in a neonatal intensive care unit, working inpatient in the hospital, working in a clinic, and then eventually having a private practice. In 1983, when I started medical school, I was taught vaccines were safe and they were effective and give them. But I was not taught about any of the science around their safety or any of the studies around how safety were done. And it wasn't until 1998 that a mother came up to me and said, Dr. Larry, did you know that there's mercury in vaccines? And I said, no, I did not. And as a medical student, I was trained to critically think. If you see an observation, you go after it and try and.
So Dr. Larry just talks about how he didn't know. And we also know there's a recent video from the World Health Organization where they're admitting this. Doctors in medical school are getting a day and a half of training on vaccines. And let's just be real here. It's a day and a half of getting training on vaccines. It's not like doctors are bad people or doing bad things or evil and there's a big conspiracy theory to hurt people. That's a lie. The reality is the pharmaceutical company is lying, and they're the ones that are the problem. And we need to, as a society of people, have a serious conversation about what's happening. Because if you just look around you, yes, 54% of our children are chronically ill. We have like really, really bad health ratios compared to other nations that are, in our status. Other wealthy nations that, we're not living in, well, some people in our country are, and that's really sad, but living in abject poverty and being exposed to, filth and not having adequate, proper sanitation or water and those kinds of things. So, I think it's time that we really have this conversation in a very real way and not teach our children to lie to their families. That's a really, really bad thing. It's just not a great way to teach young people. Well, we're going to sign out and say goodnight. Any last words, Mr. Sparks?
No, I would say try to search other sites for vaccine information. That would be my advice.
The science is never settled. And we're going to be live tomorrow. We're going to have Misty Flowers on a lot earlier. We're pretty late tonight, getting a late show. I had a lot of technical glitches. Hopefully everything ran well. We're broadcasting across multiple streams now. So you can visit us online at jterrypresents.com. You can support our work by hitting the Donate Now button, which we'd greatly appreciate. And we're going to close out with our little outro. That's what it is. It's an outro. I got it. I didn't say that right before, but I got it. So we'll be live tomorrow, 8 o'clock. And hopefully everything was going to work out well for our techno genies. And for now, good night.